Hey guys, welcome back. So today I'm out here shooting my Star Model B. The Star Model B is a 9mm 1911 copy that's made in Spain. I purchased this pistol from AEM Surplus. There are a lot of similarities between this pistol and the Browning 1911, but there's some differences as well. We'll talk about both. Let's get going. The Star has a lot of similarities between it and the 1911, which I have here in my hand. You'll notice side by side the pistols are of comparable size. The Star is just a little bit smaller, a little bit more narrow through the frame and slide. However, it has the same Browning locking mechanism, has a bushing that holds the barrel in the front with a plunger as well, which you can see there. And it has a single action hammer. It has standard military sights, which are okay for, not really target sights, but they shoot fairly well. The gun does shoot to point of aim. But that's kind of where the similarities end. I mean, it has the overall same appearance as a 1911, obviously, but take the trigger as an example. The trigger, instead of being a straight pullback trigger like on the 1911, it's pinned here at the top and it hinges, so it rotates backwards. It doesn't pull straight back, it's hinged and it rotates a little bit. It has a very different trigger feel, but however, it has a nice, light, crisp trigger. It does feel really good. Not like a 1911 trigger, but very similar. You'll also notice that the 1911 has a grip safety right here. You'll notice that's missing from the back of the Star. It does not have a grip safety. Also, the mainspring housing of the 1911 is removable with a single pin that holds it in. This is the mainspring housing. The Star does not have that mainspring housing. It's contoured like a 1911 A1, but it does not have a removable back strap. The magazine release on the Star is in the same spot as you would expect with a 1911. The safety is also in the same spot as you would expect with a 1911. And then you have the slide release or slide stop right here as well. So the controls, the firing controls, are very similar to a 1911. So if you shoot a 1911, the Star would make a great practice handgun in a more affordable 9mm Parabellum or 9mm Luger versus a 45 ACP. It has very, very light recoil, and I found that it's pretty accurate. It shoots very, very well. Field stripping the Star Model B is just like field stripping a 1911 for the most part. First of all, you'll want to drop the magazine out of the gun by hitting the magazine release that's by your thumb here on the side of the frame. Once you have the magazine out, you'll of course want to make sure that the weapon's clear, and then you can begin the disassembly process. Turn the weapon on end like this, push down on the plunger with your finger, and rotate the bushing to one side. And be careful not to let that bushing and spring go flying. Now you can push the slide back to its disassembly notch, which is just like a 1911. You'll want to push it back and line up the disassembly notch with the top of the slide stop. You can push the detent here with your finger, push that through, get it started, then you're going to have to wiggle it a bit and it'll come right out. Now you can slide the slide off the frame of the pistol. Inside, it's going to look real familiar to you if you're used to 1911s. You have your recoil spring and guide rod and a drop link on your barrel and then your barrel bushing. So rotate the barrel bushing the other direction, take it off, and then you can just push your barrel right out the front of the slide. Just like that. Now the handgun is completely field stripped. Once you take a look inside the handgun, you'll notice some other differences between it and the 1911. First of all, you'll notice there's a lack of a disconnector on the top here. The disconnector is inside the slide rail over here on the right-hand side of the frame. However, the cut of the feed ramp, the rails themselves look very similar to a 1911 through the dust cover. Everything looks very similar. If you look inside the slide itself, you'll also notice it looks very similar to a 1911. A few minor differences, but very, very similar. The barrel, the locking lugs, and the drop link, again, just like the 1911. Seems like some of these parts are just a little bit smaller than the 1911, obviously, so it's like a slightly miniaturized 1911, but still very darn close. To put it back together, you just reverse the process. The Star Model B has an interesting history behind it. This particular handgun was probably used by German forces during World War II. You can tell if this was a war production handgun by the markings on the slide. In this case, it has a Spanish marking, an N, which is an N with a little squiggly line across the top, that denotes the fact that this handgun was manufactured during the Second World War period. Now, Spain technically remained neutral during the war, but they did supply arms and ammunition mostly to Axis countries, and this handgun was likely used by German forces during the war. The Germans didn't mark these handguns once they took possession. They didn't feel it was necessary. They were primarily used by rear echelon troops, police forces, and military units that weren't on the front line. However, it's interesting to note that the handgun was used by German forces during the war, and this is technically a World War II surplus handgun. The Star Model B, this is a second generation Model B handgun. There were several other generations before the Star Model B that while they used the Browning design principles, the ergonomics of the handgun were completely different. By the time they got around to the final generation, the second generation B model, the ergonomics, the feel, the heft, the pointability, the controls, everything pretty much mirrored the 1911. It's also interesting to note that these handguns are very popular in Hollywood films. Take the movie Pulp Fiction as an example. The character played by Samuel L. Jackson carries a chrome what most assume to be a 1911. It's in fact a Star Model B. These handguns were easily converted to fire blanks, unlike the standard 45 ACP 1911 handguns, so Hollywood wound up using quite a few of these in the movies and still use them to this day. Shooting the Star Model B is a lot like shooting in 1911. All the controls should be familiar to you if you have a 1911 in your inventory already. To load the pistol, all you have to do is take the magazine, which I have here. This is an 8-shot magazine. I have 115 grain ball rounds, which are Wolf steel-cased ammo. Insert it into the grip, operate the slide, cocks it. It's a single-action type pistol. Do have the safety here if you want to engage it, and the weapon's ready to fire. The trigger is very light and crisp, even though it's slightly different than the 1911. It doesn't pull straight back, but again, it rocks. It's still a very light, crisp trigger, and it's very easy to shoot. The sights are just okay. We have a target down at 7 yards. Let's run down range and take a look at how this weapon printed with the 115 grain Wolf ammo. We're down range at 7 yards after firing 8 rounds at this target. About 2 inches, about 2-inch group. Not too bad. The handgun shoots quite well. I found that the ergonomics are very similar to a 1911, so given that and the fact that I shoot a lot of 1911s, the handgun just seems to shoot quite well for me. 2 inches with a 115 grain ball, not too bad. It's time for some final thoughts on the Star Model B. The Star Model B sells for $319.95 from AIM Surplus. Overall, I'm impressed with the quality of the handgun. It shoots quite well. It's been very reliable with a wide variety of ammunition. Overall, the handgun is a good buy at $319. It's a CNR eligible handgun, so that means if you have a CNR license, you can order it and have it shipped right to your house. One other thing I want to touch upon before we go is I want to talk about the grips. I'm sure I'm going to get the question, does the handgun accept 1911 style grips? The answer is no. It's a different handgun entirely. One of the things that is different about the handgun is there's a lack of a detent pin holding mechanism here, that the detent that holds the slide stop and the detent that works on the manual thumb safety on the 1911, it's not present. Those are actually built into the levers themselves, so the grips are completely different, plus they're a little bit wider and the hole patterns are not the same. But if you're looking for a handgun in 9mm that replicates the 1911, that's reliable, relatively accurate, and easy to shoot, you'd be hard-pressed to beat the Star Model B. If you guys have any questions about this handgun, you can ask those questions on our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/military arms. As always, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for those subs, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Hey guys, I want to give you a sneak peek at a weapon that I'm reviewing. This is the GSG STG-44 and 22 long rifle. I had a chance to look at this rifle when it was a prototype at SHOT Show 2012. These rifles are now shipping, and I'm taking a look at this rifle. I'll be reviewing it soon, so stay tuned.